This is Hi, everybody. Welcome to our 12th anniversary show. Yes, it's been 1 year since we started doing the Ask Sean show. And we're celebrating some other things as well. The Climate Reality San Fernando Valley chapter was named California Nonprofit of the Year. So we can all unmute and congratulate. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of volunteers. All of us here at the Ask Sean show are volunteers. We're wanting to help each other, and it shows, the power of what we can do together to help each other electrify, reduce emissions, make our homes healthier, and improve the value of our homes as well. So congratulations. Diana, you want to share a little bit about going to Sacramento for this amazing award?
Yes, it was really quite an honor. And as you suggested, Tristan, it really takes a sort of a village of people to make something like this happen. So everybody on the team, I'm there in the middle, and to my right on the left side of the screen is Kathy Schaefer. She is our legislative coordinator. And on the opposite side is Susie Herrera. She is district director for Senator Stern's office. And it was Senator Stern who honored us with this award. So we were very happy to receive this, and felt very honored. So, but we also realized that, we are part of this bigger climate reality project group, and we share that with you guys. And
I think it's important. Maybe you can share in the chat. It's important to get involved in local groups, because I think we all don't realize the value of our voice and what we can do to change. I'm sure it is challenging at sometimes, but like I said, I've made the best friends of my life being involved in environmental and other local groups. And I just encourage you that it does make a huge difference. Even if you have a few minutes a month, it can make a lot of difference. Well, you've come to the right place tonight. Tonight, we are talking about heat pumps, and we have a fantastic guest from the New Building Institute. Amruta is here to talk about an exciting game-changing field study on 120-volt heat pumps and a lot of other things that the New Building Institute is doing in terms of codes and policy that really impact all of us, because a large part of the emissions are coming from buildings. That's why we're doing electrification, also to help us save on our electric bills. When we electrify, you can see enormous savings. Also, the health of our homes is so much more improved as well. And a lot of emissions are coming from, gas appliances in our home. I don't know if you've seen this out there, that gas cooking can raise childhood asthma. I know this impacted my daughter and I, and so it's one reason why I'm personally interested in this topic. And 13% of our nation's climate pollution comes directly just from gas ovens. So if you can make that switch, we're here to help you with that. Tom has actually been helping me on that project at my own home. We also have a fantastic guide at redwoodenergy.net. If you go under research, there's a bunch of different guides to help you on your electrification journey, right, Sean? We've got a lot out there, both if you're building a new home or if you just want to retrofit your current home, or maybe you want to advocate for that in your own multi-family housing unit or rental unit. A lot of great free information. Also, most of the shows are on our YouTube channel here at climatereality.com. And we're about to start with Heat Pump 101, but I want everybody to please introduce themselves. Got about 50 of you have joined us so far, and we'd love to know more about, where you're coming from, why you're interested in electrification, and if you have some questions for us for later in the show. This comes from Sean Armstrong. I follow him a lot on LinkedIn. And here's a major tipping point that $1 billion a day is expected to be invested in solar this year alone. Very exciting, right, Sean? Big moment.
This is now, the world is investing more in solar than it is in fossil fuels. Like, we've reached that tipping point. And it wasn't because of peak oil. It's because solar and renewables generally are so cheap. Yeah, we're moving faster than predicted and getting our grid cleaned up. That's a good thing. Buildings are lagging, vehicles are lagging, but we're starting to get some momentum.
Yeah, and the more that we can advocate for it in our own city council, send an email to our elected officials, it does hugely make a difference. to show that we're behind this. Also, another great post by Sean that I saw the other day. Here is a new battery-powered fleet of trucks and vehicles that Schneider just unveiled, as well as 16 chargers. So that's really exciting because it makes great business sense for them to do this. Another one that I just uncovered was that, here's a real problem I think a lot of people are finding as they want to transition to electric appliances, that a lot of contractors aren't available, or they don't yet have the training. And here, one city alone went ahead and said, look, we've got 700,000 homes. They're contributing 31% to the city's emissions, but we don't have enough contractors that can install them. So they came up with a really innovative program, the Heat Pump Lab, that they have just launched recently through a partnership with the Energy Coordinating Agency. And so they're going to be giving training so that contractors can have skill certifications in clean energy and efficiency. So it's super exciting. And a lot of big, manufacturers are part of this whole Heat Pump Lab. So I'm hoping to see more of this. And one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of focus on heat pump and heat pump water heaters is because they save a ton of emissions every year. And so it's like planting trees when you just do that and you put a new heat pump in your home. Plus, you're going to find that you're going to be living so much more comfortably. You also will get some money back. So it's really important to think about doing that now so that you can take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act. And also that we put on our promotion for this show is that the heat pump water heaters save as much energy as 6 solar panels. So sometimes if you may not be able to go ahead and get a solar array on your home, you might be able to go ahead and get a heat pump. And so this is another way you can just start small and do one thing at a time, or do all of the projects. It's important to know that over 120 million water heaters in the US could save 100 million tons in carbon emissions if we were to make that switch. So it is powerful what we're talking about here today. And replacing that gas water heater is like 2,000 pounds of CO2 emissions a year. It's like, as we said, growing 17 trees and saving 12 tons of emissions over a lifetime. So now I'm going to hand it over to the one and only Sean Armstrong to give us a little history of Heat Pump 101, and take it away, Sean.
Thank you, Tristan. Hold on here for a second while I get this into full screen mode. Dang it. The Zoom box is overlapping my controls on the, come on.
That happens to me too.
Yeah, so there, got it. Okay, and now I can move that. Okay, so this is the guts of a heat pump, and we're going to get to that in a moment, but I'm going to talk about first the basic idea of evaporating things. This is an early way of making ice, and they would have clear skies at night, and they would have radiant cooling where heat would be leaving into the open, naked sky, the blackness of the desert, and then make thin sheets of ice and then store it in buildings next door that were heavily insulated. This sort of radiant cooling. Something you might see with tule fog in the mornings, a certain kind of, like when the ground gets really cold because it's losing its heat. People always wanted ice. It's collected everywhere. This is fun in New Jersey. New Jersey's heated up quite a bit since then. But this fellow over in Australia gets credit, and everyone was working at the same time in the 1850s. So this is always like, yeah, he deserves credit. So he's a typesetter. He gets ethanol. He gets an ether, pardon me, on his hands. He feels how cold his hands get when it evaporates, and he's like, "Wow, what if I use that evaporation from my just like body temperature? What if I use that to try to cool things?" And he made a way of collecting the evaporated ether into a system that recycled it. So when it evaporated, then it would chill off and turn back into liquid and trickle back into the system. And he was pumping this in around, and he got ice out of the deal. He made a surface cold enough that it'd make ice from that evaporation. So he makes a whole bunch of money, and everyone gets excited. It becomes a global phenomenon that you can make ice and you can store it in insulated rail cars, and beer was a very early investor in it. So much so, like some of the biggest heat pumps were being made in the United States in the 1800s. There's Anheuser-Busch's ice making for chilling off the beer. They didn't chill buildings, they chilled ice, like water to make ice. And then there's ice delivery you can see there during World War I. Carrier, still a brand name, he gets hired to make this gigantic whole building dehumidifier, because if he could chill the air and get the water out of it through that process, like dry it out, make a dehumidifier, terrific. It's a printing press, and all the paper is getting so wet from the humidity in the place that the paper is getting warped, and the newspaper, it's coming out bad, the books are coming out bad. So he succeeds at that. That's his big breakthrough. And he's just using the technology that he's learning from the breweries in Brooklyn, where he's growing up, where all the big breweries were in the United States that were using ice making ones. So just repurpose it for chilling air. Next big innovation is over in Switzerland, and the prelude leading up to World War II. They'd just gotten through World War I, and they started investing their electricity from hydro dams into making big heat pumps, well, when you're chilling something, you're also simultaneously pulling the heat out of a place. And that place where it goes could be water. So you can chill on one side and make heat get concentrated some other place. So basically they would put heat into swimming pools and into city halls. And they got through World War II being fuel independent, especially with the big public buildings, by using heat pumps. Now, Carrier, back in the United States, same time period, he pulls off the first in your house air conditioner. So just one direction, it's just doing cooling, and it's getting rid of heat someplace else. It's venting it and blowing it out. Over here, you can see in the 50s, late 40s, it becomes a smaller box, right? And so it's taking the heat from inside your house and it's getting it outside. When you walk outside, you feel the heat being blown out and you're getting nice cool air. So pleasant. They started making these both directions so that you could be cooling the air in the summertime and you could be heating the air in the wintertime. So they just put in a reversible valve, essentially reversing pumping system, some controls like little basic switches and such. And they started getting smaller. So these are versions of them are used in the 60s and 70s. I just like the names that they had for them. Now, here, Tom Cabot, who's an actual mechanical engineer, is going to explain to you what you're seeing as you like more or less have a complete cutaway. Tom, can you take yourself off mute and speak
All
to?
right. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, so maybe the first thing we'll show them are the two big fan blades kind of in the center left. So you can kind of see a fan blade there. That's going to take the outdoor air and blow it across the fan coil. And so you can see fan coils that Sean's highlighting with the cursor. Those are like a kind of like your car radiator. They've got aluminum tubes and aluminum fins and copper tubes. And inside the copper tubes is the refrigerant that Sean was telling you about that is kind of in the winter, it's boiled away. The refrigerant's at very low pressure and the cool outdoor air, it might be 20 degrees Fahrenheit, but that's warm compared to the zero or sub-zero refrigerant. So it boils the low pressure refrigerant. And that low pressure refrigerant gets sucked over in a copper tube that goes into the compressor where Sean's showing the cursor. That black cylinder is the compressor. Inside that black cylinder, it's all hermetically sealed. There's a motor and a compressor inside that cylinder. And so it jacks the vapor pressure up to a very high pressure, which really super concentrates the diffuse heat that's in that vapor. And so it comes out as a very high temperature refrigerant gas. And then that is piped into in the winter, it's piped into the indoor unit and where we get our building heat off of it. And it comes back through an expansion valve and returns to the rest of the system. In this view, I can't really see exactly where the expansion valve is, but it's just a little valve. In most of these cutaways, it'll look like a T-shaped device with 5 ports. Anyway, that's the reversing valve and expansion valve. system. And then there are some controls and a computer in the upper right of that box, putting the thing through all kinds of good paces and running the compressor motor at hundreds of different individual speeds in order to really fine tune it into giving you the heat you need at the most efficient performance with a quiet outside machine.
Thank you, Tom. Real mechanical engineer there. So visually, this idea here that on the outside is what you just saw. On the inside, this is a box that it can either blow heat in the wintertime, or it can blow chilled air at you while absorbing heat and taking it outside and blowing the heat away. So it just goes either direction. It can be an air conditioner in the summertime, and it can be a heater in the wintertime. And it's using all the same equipment, and it's just going in two different directions. Now, the computer part is a big deal because the computers only got small enough to be added into heat pumps around 2000. They started over in Japan. In the United States, although we've been experimenting with them, we didn't actually get products in the United States till 2009 from Japan, like Fujitsu and Mitsubishi, that had computers in the heat pumps. Computers do what Tom just said, which allows it to run at hundreds of different speeds. They're called variable. That's because they have many different variations of speeds. And the speed tells you how much heat it's going to pick up, either heat from the inside, which is air conditioning, when it picks it up from the inside, or it picks up heat from the outside, which is the space heating, when it brings it inside your house. Computers, which come in 2009, are now very common. They also make the heat pump's efficiency go way up. So SEER 14 is the minimum efficiency for most air conditioners. SEER 42 is what you can get with a computer right now in the United States. And about 90% of what's installed is still SEER 14, even though these computers make them massively more efficient. We need more codes. We need a little more government kind of push, or there's other solutions, but I'm just saying it's the computer-driven ones are the very efficient ones, and it only costs a couple $100s to add a computer. Water heating. We're just going through space heating kind of and some ice making. Water heating is the same idea where you're going to take heat from the outside air, 2 to maybe 5 units of it, and you're going to add 1 unit of electricity to drive this little air conditioner, which has copper coils wrapped around the tank underneath it, and those are hot copper coils. It's taking heat from the air, 2 to 5 units of heat from the air using 1 unit of electricity. And then you're going to get 3, because that's 2 plus 1, 3 units of energy into your water, up to 6. So this is a renewable energy collector. It gets heat from the air. The heat is from the air from the sunshine. Sun warms the air. You can figure out the difference between summer and winter. You understand the role of sunshine over the course of a day. It warms the air. And what you have here is an air conditioner that's chilling the air, and there's so much heat in the air that it strips off. So a thing to understand is that if you stand in front of this for 1 to 4 hours a day, it'll blow cold air in your face, like a very small, like window air conditioner. And you might like that in your kitchen. They're very commonly put in kitchen pantries to sort of keep things cool and dry in there. Now, this innovation of taking it into home water heaters starts in the 1970s. There's a dairy company in Wisconsin that is chilling the milk. And they're like, where do we put all this waste heat? Why don't we store it? And now we'll have hot water for washing down all the stalls and sterilizing things. That company then in 1978, 2 years after I was born, made the first tank type where they made a little air conditioner and they stored the water in this model HP80. All right, 1985, there's a German who decides to become a hippie. He's the grandchild of Rudolf Steibel. So German immigrant, stays in Vermont, says, I'm going to start the American Stiebel Eltron branch, and I'm going to live here. And he pulls off this super efficient heat pump water heater that to this day is really kind of our best heat pump water heater, Stiebel Eltron, but you pay money for it. Okay, over in Japan, They put computers into this type of heat pump water heater in 2001, and they start running it with carbon dioxide, which boils at negative 10, 110. Negative 110 Fahrenheit is when it boils. So that means it can absorb heat from the environment down to like negative 90 Fahrenheit pretty effectively. It cannot get too cold for a CO2 heat pump water heater. So it's super efficient, but it has to be designed with computers and very tight compression because CO2 has to be squished very tight to do its work. United States, we don't pay attention to CO2 heat pump water heaters. We don't have those big systems like you see in Japan because we don't have sitting tubs. So these are water heaters designed for showers and small tubs like 25 gallon, not 150 gallon. So all these come out in 2009. General Electric, which phased out, Rheem still here, A.O. Smith still here, Steel Eltron still going, Bradford White, and then there's a bunch of rebrands. And that's what I want to show you before we get into Amruta, who's going to take it up from here, talking about like what we have as the newest innovation. Because I'll just note that what we got when in 2009 these came out was 4,000 to 5,500 BTUs per hour. That's still what we have. 50 to 80 gallons. Now we have 40 to 80 gallons. And 500 watts up to 4,500 watts. And now 120 volt and 240. And she's going to present on the 120 volt, which is this awesome, innovative thing. Okay, so I'm going to pause there and politely share. Amruta, take it away.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, all. So I'm Amruta Khanolkar. I'm Associate Director at New Buildings Institute, and NBI is a nonprofit, and we work on work on improving built environment's energy and carbon performance through fundamental research, codes and policy, and market leadership efforts. And today I was asked to, talk to you about a little bit about one of the efforts that we are running. We are working on this plug-in 120 volt heat pump water heater technology that is just coming to the market, and validating it and assessing the market for California, and again, helping the technology with market commercialization. And I see that there are really some great questions in the chat. So I won't go into too much details and too many slides, but I do have some slides. So maybe I'll go over some of those really quickly and leave some time for more Q&A. Let me share my screen.
Tom and I will try to handle questions over in the chat. You just focus on your slides, and then you can handle the chat once you're done.
All right. Can you confirm that you see my screen?
Yes, looks perfect.
All right, thank you. So as Sean mentioned, about 3 years ago, a group of stakeholders came together and identified a gap for California market. So just for some context, there are 14 million water heaters in California, and 93% of those, so about 13 million water heaters that are fossil fuel fired. So either gas or propane or oil water heaters. And so for those customers, if they want to decarbonize, just like you guys, they want to go from from a gas or propane water heater to an electric water heater, the only option they have right now is going for an expensive panel upgrade or amperage service upgrade. A panel upgrade could be anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, but if the amperage service is not available, then it can even go up to $10,000 to $15,000. And so for those, if you have 100 or 150 amp panel, and if you don't want to upgrade your panel, don't want to go for those expensive and extensive upgrades, there's this new technology that is coming to market, the 120 volt plug-in water heaters. So these water heaters can so basically what these water heaters are, they can use the shared circuit plug point that is available next to your gas water heater or propane water heater. And and they operate on a shared circuit 15 amp circuit, and they can, work just fine without going for expensive and extensive panel upgrades. Note that these are particularly designed for gas and propane replacements. So not for electric resistance replacements, but majority of you are looking, I'm sure you're looking at gas or propane replacements. The way the manufacturers have the designed these in a simple terms is they have removed an electric resistance element from these water heaters, which are like the most ineffective way of heating your water, and they have replaced it with a thermostatic mixing valve. Basically, what it does, what the valve does is you can increase your storage temperature to, instead of typically you would heat it to 120 degree Fahrenheit, but now with the extra valve available, you can heat it to 140 degree Fahrenheit. And without any scalding issues, you can heat your water when the sun is shining, the wind is blowing, store your water, and use it, later on. Everything without, without the use of the electric resistance element, which is 3 to 4 times more ineffective than a typical heat pump way. And today, before diving deeper into installation challenges and responding to your questions, just wanted to go over the California statewide field study that we are just completing. We installed 32 water heaters throughout California, testing this technology for its energy performance, hot water performance, installer acceptance, and user satisfaction. And few photos I wanted to highlight. These are 120 volt water heaters replacing an existing gas water heater. And in the central photo, what you see, the red circles are, your gas line is capped, your flue line is capped, and this is, again, your water heater is plugged into a normal shared circuit without going for any, extensive electrical work. So currently we have Ream has 2 models available, and 3 more manufacturers are coming to the market. This just shows an installation process. Like overall, if you don't have to go for any condensation requirements, or if your water heater is in the garage, then this is the technology for you. I am going to go show some more install locations. This one is in the garage, the one on the left, the one in the center is in the basement, and the one on the right, we used a split system with Nile. And just wanted to show another interesting install where your storage tank is separate from your heat pump. That is on above. And with that, I will share some quick results from the study. Most importantly, if people are interested in knowing about the installation costs compared to if they were to install a typical conventional heat pump water heater, which is the 240 volt heat pump water heater. So what we found out is, again, this is an emerging technology. So we had multiple installers on site. We had some, interesting lessons learned. But even after that, the 120 volt heat pump water heaters are, like, you will see a more predictable or more narrower range when it comes to the total project cost. So this is a total project cost with a 120, the one on top, and the down below is with 240 volt heat pump water heater. That's the conventional one. And you will see that the range is more broader. And it in fact goes from anywhere from 7K to 25K. It could, if you have to go for a panel upgrade or amperage service upgrade. That's where I was, I wanted to highlight on this next slide. If you look at just the top section above, unfortunately I'm unable to show you the animations, but the above is what you would target, like minimal electrical work. So in this field study, I was able to only highlight sites which required minimal electrical work, had a plug point available easily, and I could only like, you know, between $100 to $200. Whereas everything in that red square below is what you had to spend if the 120 volt heat pump water heater option was not available. Anywhere from $800 to $10,000, going for a dedicated circuit or a panel upgrade or amperage service upgrade. So basically just highlights that with the 120 volt heat pump water heater now in the market, you can really use its the technology to its advantage and reduce your installation cost when it comes to electrical work. And now from moving from installation cost to operating cost analysis, we did some cost analysis for these customers. And what we found out is, you know, depending on your rate structure, you could also save on your monthly or even annual operating cost. So for PG&E and SMUD, because their gas rates are so high, like between $2 to $3 per term, we saw like, you know, savings up to $300, anywhere from like, you know, maybe $50 to $300, depending on your use cases and your time of use. But for Southern California Edison, you will see that we did see a small penalty. So it totally depends on your rate structure. So the SCE, the Southern California gas rates are very low compared to an electric rates. So this depends on your rate structure. For propane, it was a clear winner. Like we did see savings, annual savings are up to $175.
And I apologize, I just have to add that a solar array would lower the cost of electricity. And that's like a common thing we just encourage. There you go. Keep on going, sorry.
No, it is. Yes, so these, I should add to what John just said, these water heaters are, you know, load shifting capable. So by that, what I mean is you can have them, schedule them, or they can be easily like on a Wi-Fi or cellularly controlled for it to be connected to the renewables, and you can heat your water at an off-peak time and use that heated water. So basically they act as a thermal battery. This slide just shows the energy savings potential. I talked about the operating cost savings, the installation cost savings, then operating cost savings, and now about the energy and emission savings. So what we are seeing is because it does not have the inefficient electric resistance element, or has a smaller element, and typically, you know, it is the heat pump only technology that is used in this water heater. We are seeing about 85% savings compared to a gas or propane water heater. So if you are to replace your gas or propane water heater, you would see about 80 to 85% energy and emission savings with this switch. This is a fuel switching technology, like you are going from gas, propane to an electric future. This slide I wanted to highlight. We did, survey our customers and our installers to understand what is the overall satisfaction and if they had any feedback. So overall, interestingly, like hot water satisfaction, I had like greatest. I'm super amazed by how satisfied the people are. We did have some hot water runout events, but once people made some small slight changes to their operation, overall great satisfaction. People, I did see one question about noise. Yes, these are a little bit noisier than your ambient noise. So just for your comparison, like these are between 45 to 55 dB, and a natural noise, like an ambient noise, is typically 35 dB. So if it is closer to your bedrooms, then you want to make sure that you are adding absorption pads. But on top of that, from installers, what is interesting is I was hoping that, like, overall installation wise, they were happy that they didn't have to do any electrical work. But we did have some dissatisfaction because this is a newer technology. Installers were still learning. We had to, there were some instances where installers came in and added an additional mixing valve on top of the mixing valve which was already there. So then we had to go back, remove them. So we did see some dissatisfaction because it is an emerging technology. But that should go down. Like, I'm expecting this should be more blue and grays as well. And before I close, I wanted to mention that overall, I say that, if your household is between 1 to 4 people, and if you have a gas or propane water heater, then this is a great technology for you. Overall, like 22% of the California homes can be directly decarbonized with this technology. We did see some limitations because with space constraint, this is a retrofit technology, so space is of essence. So note that manufacturers and national labs are working on coming up with a smaller form factor water heaters. But overall, there are some market barriers, and we are, as part of the Advanced Water Heating Initiative, we are working on those market barriers. I will go over what is Advanced Water Heating Initiative soon. But just to close on this, key closing points, that sizing is the key. So if you're working with your installer, make sure that they are sizing it correctly. Contractor and permitting officer awareness, again, is a key for cities. Note that, we are it's permitting officer awareness is going to be key, so that we are not spending too much time in permitting process. These are shared circuit models, so it should not be as extensive, the permitting process. And yeah, this technology is key to decarbonize retrofit market sector. So I want to mention that the report, what I just mentioned, is going to be out in few weeks. And you will know more about the report and the technology at www.advancedwaterheatinginitiative.org. And what is Advanced Water Heating Initiative? You must have heard from Sean. I'm sorry, my slides are not showing up, and that's why this, anyways, this, but what is Advanced Water Heating Initiative? It's a collective impact market transformation initiative. We started with, at New Buildings Institute with 2 people, and now there are 400 plus organizations participating, and in fact, actively working to make the water heating replacing water heating with advanced water heating. And we are working through different channels, like maybe programs and policy, workforce development, grid resiliency. So that's a little bit about the effort. And with that, I wanted to maybe stop sharing and then see. Oh, looks like we have some time for Q&A. You're on mute, Sean.
We have a lot of questions. Go ahead, Sean.
We have about 15 minutes left. And so we did have one case study that we're also going to do. So I was hoping, Amruta, that you could start weighing in over on the chat and typing away. And I think you were going to quickly speak to this example house.
All right, thanks, Sean. Yeah, so this is Jennifer Kirschbaum's home in San Marcos, California. It's a 2-story home. She has 2 air conditioners and 2 furnaces. So one set for the upstairs and one set for the downstairs. She's got a 125 amp electric panel, and it can support up to 105 amp breaker to go to a new sub panel if she needs more spaces. But we were taking a look together at the various ways she could electrify things, and she was interested in first converting the upstairs gas furnace and air conditioning coil into a heat pump. So here you can see on the left are the 2 outdoor units for the air conditioners, and on the right you can see it up in the attic, the side-mounted carrier gas-fired furnace that also has the air conditioner coil in it. And so what you would do in a conversion is take one of the 50 amp circuits that is feeding one of those air conditioners, and it can be replaced with a 20 amp circuit to feed a very efficient inverter driven heat pump like Sean's been showing you, that would sit outside and it could reuse those insulated refrigerant lines you see in the black on the left. It could reuse those, or you could put in a new line set and it would pump the warm refrigerant up to the attic, and you would take out that gas furnace in the attic and put in kind of the same size box, and in heat pumps we call it an air handler. So it would still push the warm air around the ductworks in the upstairs, and it would pull in cool air from the rooms, heat it up to become warm air and blow it out through the ducts into the rooms. And so that kind of thing can be done, and it would actually free up some panel amps by going to this efficient heat pump using that old circuit. And then the other trick is to pick one of the brands of heat pumps and models that use what I call an umbilical cord. So it feeds the air handler from the electricity coming off the outdoor unit where the outdoor controller is. So the computer controller on that outdoor unit can tell the indoor unit how hard to work, and it just sends the power up an umbilical cord. So that frees up the old 15 amp circuit that was in the attic. And so one of the things you kind of hear when I'm talking about this stuff is I end up really focusing on how do we make use of old circuits and amperage so that you can fully electrify your whole house, even as you switch over to these heat pumps and free up some extra space on the panel and extra amps on the panel.
I want to add that Carrier, the brand that you're seeing here, does not do that umbilical cord that Tom's saying, but Mitsubishi does. So in this kind of situation, is there any other brand that does an umbilical?
Fujitsu also does that, and Mr. Cool, one of the DIY models, has a central version that is also umbilical fed. And then when I say umbilical fed, it's also, if you can see on my screen, there's my little mini split ductless head unit. All of those ductless head units are also umbilical fed from the outdoor compressor, so that the power line is part of the refrigerant line set going to the machine.
So then there's some questions for you.
Yeah, so Jennifer was hearing from her contractors that they were a little worried about getting into heat pumps. And we see this a lot in the coastal California, is lots of our HVAC contractors don't yet trust modern heat pumps. They're thinking about heat pumps from the 1950s when the performance would really fall off at low temperatures, and they needed backup resistance strips. And so that's not the case anymore with these super efficient heat pumps that can get heat from the air, even when it's -30 Fahrenheit, which is still 430 degrees Rankine. That's 430 Fahrenheit sized degrees above absolute zero. There's a whole lot of heat left in that air. Even though it feels cold to our hot skin, that air has a lot of heat. The heat pump gathers it, concentrates it, brings it to a high temperature, puts it in the house. And that's what will keep us cozy. Anyway, I was advising her to talk more with her contractors, see if she needs to shop around for another one who is more comfortable with heat pumps.
All right. So well done. Yay, Tom. So now, how will we do the hands? Or someone raise their hand if they want to do a question, like ask us out loud?
And I have one from Diane Bailey as well that we wanted to cover. So let me go to our little presentation. Diane, do you want to unmute yourself? And thank you, Amruta. This is great. Keep answering questions. Please share your information in the chat. This is a game changer for all of us who want to have a heat pump. And this is our next question. Diane Bailey is trying to help a friend replace a gas water heater. Diane, are you there? I see you in the chat.
Sure, yes. And I want to really just quickly thank Sean and Tom and Amruta so much for sharing their expertise. This is an amazing amount of information and supremely helpful. So thank you. Yes, a family member has a very tough utility closet with a furnace jammed in there, as well as a water heater now trapped behind a vent pipe. And there's only 20 inches of clearance. And I'm trying to convince them to replace the gas water heater, which is more than 20 years old now, with a heat pump. I'm not sure it'll fit, but they're also extremely nervous about the noise from a heat pump because it's right near some bedrooms. So thanks so much for taking on this. And I'll just note that there was a similar question in the chat too.
This is a really fun one. Thank you, Dan, for bringing this. So Tom and I talked, and a couple solutions. One would be is that the white pipe that you see there, that could be cut. You see how it's got blue glue on it? You could just add more blue glue and fix it. So you could cut that pipe out, and then you'd have more than 20 inches to get the replacement heat pump water heater tank in there, which you would put on a vibration pad, and you'd treat it like it's about as noisy as a dryer. It could be quieter than that, but that's how you should sort of think of it and explain it to people. It's like a dryer, like you put it in these mechanical rooms on a vibration pad, just like you would a dryer or a washing machine, because it does make the fan that's in it and the pump that's in it, or the compressor, I should say, they make vibrations. Now, a different option is, let's say you couldn't cut that white pipe. You could put in an electric resistance tank and put more solar up on the roof, or just, look at the fact that our grid is getting cleaner. But electric resistance tanks, they go as skinny as 16 inches in diameter, like one of these tanks that you could put in. And you could get a 40-gallon skinny 16-inch tank of electric resistance in there. You'd have to deal with the 240-volt wiring. It's not efficient. Third option is that you could put that skinny electric resistance tank in there, but don't use the resistance much. And instead, you'd use Nile, has an E8. So basically, you'd get, how we were showing like the air conditioner heat pumps that go outside and then heat the house? They make a tiny one, like the size of a window air conditioner, but it sits outside and it produces hot water. And so in a mild climate, you could have the Nile's E8, which is like $2,500. It's not cheap, and it's just a little tiny heat pump that makes hot water. And that is 120 volts, so you can plug it into any outlet. It's designed for that 120 volt standard. And they donated one to Redwood Energy, and we've been field testing it in return, like running it through all its paces. Works great, does terrific amount of shower producing work and such. So those are your three.
Yeah, other thing I would add to that is, this doesn't look very small existing water heater to me. If it is like 50 gallon, I don't know, is it 50 or 65 gallon? If it is, then maybe you could go for Ream has a 40 gallon 120 volt heat pump water heater. So if your family is 1 to 4, like small, if they do not have too much demand, then you could go for Ream 40 gallon 120 volt heat pump water heater, bump up the temperature to 140 degrees. And the efficiency penalty is only 6 to 7% based on the NIA study. So there is not much of an efficiency penalty. You could schedule your water heater to, not use that during the time of use between 4 to 9 p.m. in California. But I think a 40 gallon Ream 120 volt with the increased temperature might work for you.
I was looking at the spec on that, and it's 20.25, like it's 20 and a quarter inches. So that one, and it's only the 40 gallon that's that skinny. The 50 gallon tank is 22.25 inches. So maybe you could squeeze a 40 gallon tank in there without having to cut that white pipe out.
Exactly.
Put a tank in there and then fix the pipe again with some glue and some fittings, which is not that big of a deal for a pipe like that. Here's the Nile E8 that I mentioned, and it's this metal box here. You can put any storage tank. You don't have to use theirs. But this metal box is the heat pump that would sit outside, like on a bracket or something like that. You wouldn't necessarily want to attach it to your wall because it could vibrate your wall and be unpleasant. So, or put it on a bracket with anti-vibration pads. They make these rubber gasket-like pads that mitigate vibration. Okay.
That's great. And I do want to say, if you're thinking of switching out your water heater, you want to be proactive on this. because a lot of us have found us over holidays with all kinds of guests coming over, and all of a sudden, you know, you're without hot water. And so you want to start that process now to go ahead and make that switch is a great thing. John, do you see any other questions in the chat? There were so many amazing questions that we wanted to get to. Or Tom, you want to do one that maybe we could share with everybody?
Well, I do see one up there from Faramars about asking about what are some good heat pump options for a renter in a 1-bedroom or studio apartment. And so it's in the Redwood Energy retrofit guide, but we've been seeing some inverter driven portable heat pumps, and they have a dual hose connection that fits into a window opening. And so it'll grab outdoor air, bring it in the winter, get the heat out of it and put it back out again. And so it'll do the opposite in the summer. It'll bring the outdoor air in, use it to cool off the condenser and reject heat outside. So it's a portable air conditioner that can be run quietly because it's got an inverter drive on it, and it uses dual hose. So that's about a $600 device.
I'm bringing that up here. Let me share my screen. So some years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, we started buying these as Redwood Energy, and our staff started playing with them. And more of these are sold than house heat pumps, like window air conditioners and portable air conditioners / heat pumps. They're sold like 50% more a year than ones for people's homes. It's really quite a market. And only Medea is making one that has the computer that makes it quieter, the inverter, which is the same thing as the computer. So just noting that the Medea Duo Smart Inverter Ultra Quiet, this product from Medea, it's ultra quiet is the important word that it gets you to the Medea, but Toshiba makes it also. Essentially, it's a rebrand, like they stick the Toshiba stamp on it. So for renters, this is great. That dual hose that Tom mentioned, there's an air intake and there's an air exhaust, and it's all in one enclosure. And it kind of does an interesting sort of heat exchanger job a little bit. And it makes it easier to get into a window. Both slider and sash windows can be used with these. So for $700, like I sent one down to my staff who just had a baby, and she lives in a house with like 10 people, you know, it's family, multi-generational, that whole thing. And she is able to nurse, and the baby can sleep right next to this when it's in air conditioner mode in the summertime, because it's quiet. It's like 10 decibels quieter, which makes it feel like about 1/4 as loud. So it's much more pleasant than most of them. So there you go, Medea Duo.
I love that. There were some questions about how much more efficient is a 240 volt versus 120 volt plug-in water heater. I mean, what are some pros and cons between those, Amruta?
Yeah, and I also see a comment by Andrea Leon. So I'm sorry that you saw some penalty on your operating cost bill. So I will try to answer both the questions. One is, if you have a 240 volt heat pump water heater, then make sure that you are using the right setting. It should be kept on heat pump only mode. If you're not on the heat pump only mode, and if you're on the vacation or some other modes, not the vacation, if you're on the electric resistance mode or high heat mode, then basically it will try to use that non-efficient electric resistance element, and then you will see higher operating costs. And to your question, Tristan, like, you know, the difference between 120 volt and 240 volt, when it comes to, what was the question?
What's, you know, in terms of efficiency, or what are the pros and cons versus a 240 volt or 120 volt plug-in?
Yeah. So what we saw was, at least in the field study, is because in the 120 volt heat pump water heater, because there is no electric resistance element, or it is a smaller electric resistance element, we are seeing 85% energy savings compared to a gas water heater. I would imagine if it was a 240 volt heat pump water heater, then mostly the electric resistance element, the inefficient electric resistance element, would have kicked in. and the efficiency would have been lower. So we unfortunately do not have apples to apples comparison, but based on the studies we have done overall, we do think that the 120 will save on energy because there is no inefficient element in it.
Yeah, I've heard that before, that you can, the factory settings can be left on, and that's not always correct. You can be really finding that you're not getting the true efficiency.
Yeah. So make sure that you are setting it on heat pump only mode, unless you are experiencing any water, like hot water issues.
Now, with these upcoming heat waves, how will a heat pump be a great solution for a lot of us? The more of us that hug our heat pumps and get them installed, what could that mean?
I'll take a whack at that. And Tom, you're next. So the inverter heat pumps, the ones that you on purpose switch over to for space heating, so they can go to sub-freezing temperatures. You need a computer usually to go below 30 degrees. Two-stage heat pump can go to 20 Fahrenheit, but computers are what you put in most of the country, and it makes sense. That computer also allows it to overperform and during summer air conditioning. Single-speed heat pumps and two-stage heat pumps are kind of like what they sound like. They can either go one speed only, or then go two speeds. And an inverter is like 100 speeds. So if you're trying to go up the Alps, it's like it's getting really hot, the machine can start getting into gears that allow it to spin everything and move the refrigerant faster in order to deal with the fact that there's either not much heat outside because it's really cold, or there's a lot of heat outside and it has to work hard to discharge heat into the outside air. So you can get boosts of performance with the computer of like 10%, 20%, 30% more than its rated normal amount to compensate for the fact that there's some extreme weather that's happening. So that's a real good one. One other thing to mention is that we are in the middle of a refrigerant change in our country for air conditioners. We're going from 410A to R32. That's the primary move that we're seeing. R32 has been replacing air conditioners worldwide for many years, finally getting to the United States. Those also perform better at higher temperatures. R32 is just a better refrigerant both for cold and for hot. So as we go into this coming decade with Biden regulations, Air Resource Board of California regulations that are forcing R32, including a big sweetheart deal during one of the fiscal cliffs that sent money to Louisiana. Everything's going on, money, regulations to get us to use R32. So that also is an improvement for air conditioning and space heating. I'll pause there. Tom.
I agree with what you've been saying. I'm just writing a comment kind of highlighting that we tend to recommend these inverter-driven machines because they're more efficient and they're pleasant to live with because they'll help your house get to the right equilibrium and just stay there. And then they're also more pleasant for your neighbors because it's not going bang on and then bang off and coasting and bang back on. It just hums along at a little low power. I measure the power of my heat pump during the winter, and it just varies between 600 and 1200 watts. And that's in my 2,200 square foot home.
Mm-hmm. And there was a question you answered earlier, Tom, from Trisha, a bar in the Bay Area, Menlo Park, about to get solar, thinking about a heat pump water heater, but space is an issue. We have a tankless water heater between a stacked washer dryer and a ceiling. And what can we do?
Yeah. Sean and I actually each have the same kind of combined washer dryer machine. We both have the same big model of the nice machine, about 4.5 cubic feet of drum. That's the biggest washer machine you can get for most homes. And then that drum also dries the clothes. And so we just, the way I do laundry at my house, I just put dry, dirty clothes in there and 3 hours later get dry, clean clothes out of it. Takes up less space, so that's freed up more space. And so it does really sound like in Trisha's case, space is a super premium thing. And so figuring out, what little Tetris do you want to play so in your electrification so that you get it all done without having to add on to your house or add on to your electric panel. And, there's plenty of ways to get these jobs done. Yep, that's just like my machine.
I would add to that a water heater you can put in electric resistance if you have to. It's not the worst thing to put in heat pump, to skip the heat pump water heater if you can't get the one that's the right size for your situation. But this, which doesn't solve your sideways distance, this is still like whatever, 30 something, 32 inches or so in width. But this is something that gets rid of the top bottom problem. Like this is one machine that does all the job. It's very efficient. It's quiet. It's pleasant. It has nice, even has nice chimes. There's another one of the users like, it sounds pretty. But sometimes you would put in a tank there, as I mentioned earlier, and then run hot water to that tank from a heat pump that's outside. And that could be the Nile E8 that I just showed you, that's small, that's 8,000 BTUs an hour, or it could be a Chiltrex, which is 16,000 BTUs per hour, which is something that you could fill one of those gigantic eggshell bathtubs with. That's the kind of like Japanese sitting tub style. What I'm trying to say is that there are outside heat pumps that can deliver hot water to your electric resistance storage tank so that you could put a skinny tank in and still be able to, because you had an on-demand there that's up on the wall. You generally don't want to hang more than about 30 gallons on a wall because it's so heavy that it could rip out the studs, particularly in an earthquake. So on-demand is kind of a trick because there's no storage there.
Mm-hmm.
You really are going to need some storage to work with the heat pump water heater. But on-demand is burning like 120,000 BTUs in an hour. And a heat pump is designed for like 4,000. like 4% as much heat instantaneously being able to be produced. So you need some storage. And that would mean potentially either moving it someplace else or getting an electric resistance on-demand water heater, which is like a 60 amp device, like a real fast EV charger, or 2 electric resistance dryers running at once. So that'd be a great reason to put this in, because that free up 30 amps right there, because your electric resistance dryer is a 30 amp dryer, probably. And this could just plug in. It's 1,400 watts. So you could get rid of a whole bunch of the power demand and put in an electric resistance on-demand water heater there. That would perhaps fit. And so that's my idea. What do you want to say, Tom?
No, I was just working on another question about the Nile E8. I've forgotten about its weatherproofness. So I forget whether it needs to be sheltered from rain. But I also think it's got a low ambient temperature issue because it also does not have a defrost cycle. So when I think of the Nile E8, I think of installing them in a crawl space or a basement or a garage where they are not going below about 38 Fahrenheit.
Well, you generally don't put a water heater with exposed piping outside in places where it would freeze. So you generally would have a water heater. What this is, this is a warm weather place. If you were in a cold climate, you'd be putting a heat pump outside that ran refrigerant into the building and heated up the tank where it is. And there are heat pump water heaters that do that. But it's interesting, the Sandin, the CO2 heat pump water heater that I showed you during that slide deck, the one that's from Japan, they do run hot water outside in very insulated pipes. They believe more in insulation or something. Anyway, we are at the end of our Ask Sean show. I'm getting a little delirious. So come on back next month. Shoot us some emails. I'll put my email address, and Tom, can you put yours in the chat? And
right. And actually, we are taking a summer break next month, right? Tristan, if you want to add to that, but yeah, a lot of people are traveling, and so we're going to take advantage of the opportunity to take a little break. But we will let you all know when the next Ask Sean show will be, but it'll be very soon after that.
And if you guys want to schedule us during the break, I'd be willing to show up to like the New Jersey one, but you have to do all the organizing. So Diana and Tristan can take a break, like a real thing. So,
Yes.
but
Well,
yeah.
I'm meeting with Steve Miller tomorrow from the New Jersey chapter and from other chapters. So we'll be working on that as well. We just want to make sure you have the guide here on Redwood Energy's website. You can't miss it. There's also great resources on the switches on as well as the Tech Clean California contractors list. But we're also happy to take your questions over the summer. Diane, maybe you could put our emails in the chat too, so that we can reach out to everybody. We did recently have a show on electrification for renters, and that's up on our YouTube channel as well. And I'll be sending a follow-up email to all of you that registered today for our 1-year anniversary show. We can't believe we did this. If you're interested in a future case study, please email us. Here's the email that Diane is going to put in the chat so that we can get all your information and start working on your case study. There's also great calculators to see what money you could get back from the Inflation Reduction Act. And Tom also has the Watt diet that you can look up on Redwood Energy. There's also a cool guide on all the IRA, rebates and incentives, and please go for them now because, we don't want them to be gone before you start your electrification journey. And I think on Jennifer's case study, we're even recommending her do one of the switches this year and then maybe next year, the other one, so that you can take advantage of the rebates in both years. But please check with your CPA and all that on that too, because we're just giving recommendations and ideas as well. And again, we'll be seeing you. We're going to take a summer break a little bit, but we will still be around to answer your questions on email. And if you would like to do one in your town or city or state or group, please reach out to us and we will help make that happen because we love to talk electrification. Thank you guys so much. And we'll see you soon. We can stop the recording now. See you soon.
Thanks for coming,
Thanks,
everyone.
Yep. And I just want to make sure Jennifer didn't have any more questions on her case study before Tom and I jump off. Great to see y'all.
I'm good. Thank you. It was a great presentation. Appreciate it.
Yes. And we'll try to get you some of the slides and all that kind of stuff too, if we can be helpful on that. Andrea, were there any other questions that you had? You had such great input in the chat. Please let us know if we can be of help. Tom and I are both here.
Yeah, no, and I like to share my experiences because I've kind of gone through the grinder trying to elect.
Yeah, we want to hear. So you had some challenges getting the rebate, is that right?
Yes, and even just finding the contractor and going through that, and I went and installed my water heater, and I mean I got quoted like almost $15,000 for my water heater, and I don't know, I think it was a lot. And then I asked them about these new models, the 120 volts, and they said it's going to be the same amount, which I thought it was weird. And then I called another vendor and they're like, oh, just to give me a quote, they wanted like $200. So I don't know, it's just been a little challenging. And then the fact that this winter, thank God I had a heat pump and I didn't have to be scammed by Solga Gas, but then that threw me into the third tier. And DWP, once you access a third tier, they will penalize you for a whole year and charge you $15 access fee every month. So I just want to make sure that, there's a way that we can figure out when we're reaching a peak once you electrify your home so that we don't get penalized for electrifying homes. So I want to work with the city council and DWP and, basically everyone to make sure that there's an app or there's a way when you're electrifying your homes.
Andrea, I put my email in the chat. You might want to write me an email. I worked for 30 years for a municipal gas and electric utility and then worked on policy since then. So, might be able to help you structure the argument to the LADWP.
Yeah, and also to IOUs, because I would imagine IOUs are even worse.
Yeah, is this what you're in Los Angeles?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah.
No, we definitely have a lot of contacts and connections. So I put my email in the chat too. So if we can help elevate some of those concerns.
Thank you.
New Building Institute is working with LA. Actually, they worked on some of their electrification codes and things like that. So it's important to get this feedback, because I think a lot of people are on board with electrification, but we're all hitting hurdles as we're, going along the way. But I hope that people don't give up, and that they know that we're here for each other in this journey. And that, Sean really means it. He, when we sent out the Zoom confirmation, it has his email there, that you guys reach out to us and that you keep our email. So if you're having trouble getting to Sean or one of us, that you reach out to us, because we really do want to try to help and look at what is going on. I also want to know that Department of Energy has announced a lot of new webinars and programs on electrification. So if you go to the Department of Energy website, there's some great things, as well as Switches On and Rewiring America. And Tom, also you have a nonprofit, right, Tom?
Yeah, I volunteer with a group called sunwork.org up in the Bay Area and also in San Luis Obispo. But we train volunteers to install solar and how to install heat pump water heaters. We're out installing typically 4 solar systems each week and a heat pump water heater each week. So people get hands-on experience. That's where I learned enough to electrify my whole house for $7,000.
Wow.
Well, Tom, you need to share that case study when we get back. We're ready to see that. Do it yourself. Because I saw that in the chat. Several people were saying that the cost was so much that they were, going towards doing it themselves where they could.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely makes sense to do it yourself. And the 120 volt water heaters just are so easy on the electric side, because you can just plug them into a regular circuit. And then that little drain line pipe is easy to glue together. It's like that white pipe we were talking about in Diane's example. And so because the heat pump water heater makes a little bit of clean condensate, it just like a cold drink gets water droplets on it. It makes around a quart of water a day out of humidity in my basement. So it's helping dry my basement out.
Great. Well,
I'm
thank
also
you.
working on a coalition called Healthy Homes, Resilient Communities, to make sure that we electrify and retrofit older multifamily homes, and that people, especially tenants, don't get displaced because, what we call greentrification, because we're now, having healthier homes, and landlords might be tempted to, use this as an excuse to kick people out. So we want to make sure that people can remain in their homes now that, we're going to be making them, healthier, and make sure that we don't have gas appliances anymore.
Absolutely. I hope you're going to reach out to us, because this was a fantastic conversation. It sounds like we need to do Heat Pump 102 as well.
Right. Well, and incorporate that with all the logistics between the IRA and the cities and all of that. So maybe that's a way we can step back in when we get back. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Appreciate the conversation and the questions. And again, if you've got a case study that you would like to get some input on the way you heard tonight, just reach out to either Tristan or myself, and we will follow up with you and get that put on the agenda. So thank you all. Thank you all very much. Have a good, Margot.
Have a happy summer. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
Margot has a question. Go ahead, Margot. Are you muted? I'm not hearing you. I see your hand raised. Sorry, Margot.
I'm trying to unplug my headphone because that's maybe, I think my cat muted my headphone.
Okay.
My sister in New Jersey, I was sending her some of the information from this, texting her, and she said, well, will it work in New Jersey too? And I just heard that comment from Sean. Who is coordinating it on our end?
I am. I'm meeting with Steve Miller tomorrow, so I'll make sure that you're invited, and I can also share a link to everybody who RSVP'd. We had well over 77 people RSVP tonight. So I'll make sure that I promise to do that, to send out, and some of the links to the YouTube shows and all that.
Yeah,
so we want to make that happen.
Thanks.
And if she has a question in the meantime, we're happy to help her. Like if she wants to send some photos or whatever, we'll do it.
She's active with several groups there, and she wanted to coordinate with the other groups. So,
okay.
And she is now a Climate Reality member as well. She went through the last training. So
Well, if she's available tomorrow, I'm meeting with Steve Miller around, I think 10:15 tomorrow. So, but I'll
Okay,
put her in right after.
one there, 1:15 there. Okay,
Yeah.
if you can send me that information, I'll
I
share it. with her.
will. I'll
Thank
send
you.
you the Zoom link.
Thanks,
And hopefully she
everyone.
can join or you. Hey, great to
Thanks,
see you all.
everybody. Have a great
night.
summer.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Greg. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye,
Thanks,
Robert.
Michelle.
Thanks for
Bye.
your email. Bye-bye, Aaron, Susan, John, Jim, Linda. Bye,
Bye.
Diana. I'll talk to you this week. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.